Welcome to PARSNIP, the monthly meeting that we have talking about local food in school systems, specifically in Southeast Minnesota, Wabasha and Goodhue counties. And today's guest is Nancy Close from CKC Foods. And I met Nancy, and I have to admit, this is how dense I am. I met her, she was volunteering for Renewing the Countryside at the state fair. And one of the things we do is sample out food from local farms at the state fair. And Nancy was there, and I suggested that she cut up watermelon. And I started to give her, like, you know, some pointers on how to cut up watermelon until I until she told me, you know, I've been in a kitchen before. I can cut up a watermelon. And so actually volunteer and has seen her way around a watermelon at least once or twice. So welcome to this meeting. And Nancy, why don't you give us a little bit of background on, I think your family story is interesting, and how that morphed into CKC Foods.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brett, and everybody that's joined today. It's really fun to be here and to be talking about things that we're all passionate about and love. So my name is Nancy Close, and I started years ago working in my father and mother's restaurant called Caravanserai Restaurant. It was the oldest, the second Afghani restaurant in the US that opened, and opened in off of Lindale Avenue in Minneapolis. There were Mexican and Italian and only just a few in 1970 when they opened. And he had lines wrapped around, he was in a hotel at the Boulevard Motel. They had lines wrapped around that parking lot of people 3 days a week when they would feed the ethnic food instead of the hotel fare. And he finally started looking for a location and settled in Highland Park. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many awards were on that wall, and just night after night after night. So we grew up in the restaurant as kids. My mom and dad worked very, very hard, and they had 4 of us. So we were always hanging out, running around in the, you know, back of the building and downstairs in the basement. But I grew up around food. And of course, I think out of all 4 siblings, we all appreciate delicious food, but I just lived for it. You know, it was constantly, Nancy, you got to go downstairs. You got to do this. You got to do that. So when I was 24 years old, I had the opportunity to purchase my dad's restaurant. Many things had changed for him, and just all of the work. My mom had stopped working in the restaurant about 6 years earlier. And so I purchased the Caravanserai Restaurant at 16 years old. And I had the greatest support by both my parents. Ended up moving that location, and I gotta say, it was just 16 and a half great years of serving wonderful, wonderful clients, great food. And because we were very focused on Afghani, Northern and Southern Indian, and Greek food, but vegetarian, and I was a vegetarian for many years. So it was just, I can't tell you what it was like growing up in that environment and being that young and having that opportunity to organize things and to create recipes. We loved holidays. We went all out with 3-day menus where people would make reservations sometimes a year in advance just to make sure that they got in during that time. Our restaurant was unusual. You sat on low pillows down to the ground, and it was all tented. We did have some traditional chair type seating. And we also had great entertainment, really beautiful ethnic music, belly dancing and tabla drumming, and people that were at the colleges. It was close to St. Thomas and St. Mary's and McAllister, all those colleges. Those musicians would come in and come and play in front of a group of people just to get that exposure. So wonderful platform. And growing up, owning a business, I was, as my father used to say, learning while I was earning. And that is really the truth. By the time that we were in the early 1990s, my brother and sister-in-law opened up a childcare in Egan, and they didn't have a kitchen, and they had no way to provide their 150 kids meals. And so after a huge struggle and really picking up fast food for a couple of months, they called and said, would you ever serve lunches to the kids? Could you get it out here? And it's family. I said, of course I can. Our lunches were very slow at the restaurant, but I wasn't thinking about childcare lunches. You know, I was making rice dishes and kind of spicy food for those kids. So thus it started. And it was really a great experience starting with my own family, talking about, oh, that was too spicy for them. What about this? And we would just talk about foods that she liked. When it came to, you know, the hamburger, and they never had hot dogs or anything, but the macaroni dishes and things, I was like, oh, that's so boring. And honestly, I don't even think it's going to be that great. My nephew was going there. It was my first one. So there was a lot of trying different foods even back then. I think the interesting thing is working with Minnesota Department of Education. They were a private program, but we had, you know, we didn't have any rules or regulations. We could feed the kids whatever we wanted as long as we stayed within that cost. One of the teachers there left after a couple of years and went into the Minneapolis public school districts, charter schools. And at that time, there were 5 schools under one umbrella. And she immediately, I'm going to say within the first couple of weeks, said, oh my gosh, the food that these kids are getting is terrible. Our childcare food is unbelievable. And even though it's for a childcare, I think our kids in our schools would love this. And it was K through 12 between the 5 schools. Some were elementary, and some were middle and high school. There wasn't an age differentiation back then that I can recall working with MDE necessarily. The rules and regulations weren't set up how they are now. But she contacted us, and it was over 600 kids between their 5 schools. And so I said, yes, you know, let's do it. It'll keep my days busy. And that grew into 2 new schools that were charter schools opening up the year following. And they were both over 1,000, each one of those schools, kids. So it started to grow extremely fast. And I did not have a plan. I'm being completely transparent. That was never a goal. I had a wonderful restaurant that I loved. And the goal was not to get involved necessarily in feeding the kids. But because I had very limited staff during the day, I was pretty much doing most of it by myself with a maintenance person and one other guy that I had cooking. So I had the experience of going out into the schools and serving. And I gotta say, I just fell in love. Watching those little kids come up and get their meals, it just took my heart away. And I started finding that I really enjoyed doing that part of my day much better than I enjoyed the evening work with the restaurant. While I loved my clients, I just longed to work with the kids and feed those kids. So that is kind of how we started to grow. And over time, I ran into, it was in 2000, we were probably feeding about 3,000 kids at that time, and still working off of basically menus that were very similar. We had started to identify that the little kids definitely want different food, and flavor profiles for the older kids had to be different. So I was doing probably 2 or 3 menus back then just to satisfy everybody. Vegetables and fruits were similar, but it was the main entrees that were different. And that again wasn't regulated necessarily. It was just what we learned by paying attention. I think being really involved, like food service directors are, you really get to know very quickly what works for your students and what doesn't. So we started to grow like crazy, and my mom fell ill and, left a long time ago, this world. But at that time, my restaurant had just an unusual problem with a leaky roof, and my landlord passed away. And a developer bought the building while I was on a last journey with my mom. And they were repairing the roof, and he never repaired the roof. Lo and behold, months later, through court case and everything, my roof fell in and they condemned the building. So I didn't have a restaurant. And I was catering now, probably again, still to around that 4,000. Our restaurant was only so big. And so I leased a small space out here in South St. Paul and moved all of our equipment and kept focusing on the catering, which is, like I said, where my heart was. And that's kind of how our beginning happened. Once I didn't have the restaurant anymore, I could really focus on additional requests to cater. And we started to grow. And we had first leased 1,000 square feet. And then a couple of years later, it was 5,000 square feet. And a couple of years later, it was another 5. And we just kept growing and growing. And part of that is that charter schools really took off in Minnesota. And many of them have been so incredibly successful. Also, we all know that things started to change in the mid 2000s, around 2008, 9, 10. MDE started a very active role, and a lot of that was all the schools that were showing up. And then the Healthy Hunger Free came into play. And when Healthy Hunger Free came into play, it gave CKC and schools around the nation this huge platform to really focus on how we were going to do things differently. For us, it was fantastic because all of the food that we were serving prior, we had gotten into age groups now definite. We had gotten into cultural meals, schools that were open with high cultural backgrounds. And we started to realize that we can definitely separate our menus, similarities for student favorites, and then culturally start to introduce 1 to 2 meals a week that would be based upon cultural preference. And the names were the hardest for us back then, believe it or not, because you definitely want to represent what it is that you're feeding the kids and creating. But at the same time, we would get schools calling and saying, we don't know what this is. And I do have a cute story. I want to say in about 2006, I made hummus for lunch. And it was probably for about, again, that 4,000, 5,000 kids. And I just could not wait for them to eat caravanserai hummus and their bread. It wasn't a whole wheat requirement back then. And we sent out these huge, huge buckets to everybody with everything else. And I got call after call after call. Numerous schools thought it was raw pancake batter and were wondering how they were supposed to cook the pancakes for all of their kids. And I mean, that day, I think maybe might have been the hardest I've ever cried in my business because I was so hurt. And I ended up refunding everybody that day for their meal. Nobody wanted to pay for lunch. It was thousands of dollars that was lost. And here it was, our famous hummus. I honestly couldn't believe it. Now people are saying, do you have chocolate hummus? Do you have this? And I'm like, no, we don't do hummus. Not for the number of meals we're serving, but just flavored dishes, biryani, vegetarian food. We've had vegetarian food from the beginning and nobody ever ordered it. I don't know, in the last 7 to 10 years, we have an enormous vegetarian clientele. And so it's been really fun to watch the trends change. But I will say that Healthy Hunger Free was a great opportunity for schools to really get on board with those fruits and vegetables, that farm to school, the FFEP, the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant came into play and focused just on beans. I know that, in the beginning, everybody across the United States was having a heart attack. And to this day, we hardly ever get complaints anymore about all of the different ways that we create bean salads. We try not to add too many of them to our meals, to tell you the truth. So some of the Latino dishes, it goes very well, but just really keeping it clean and seasoning has worked wonders for us. Over time, they have come to really accept it. And we put it always on days that it'll lend itself if they want to add it to their meal. We prompt our menus. So when we're creating, we will give little taglines like, put this in your wrap, try it all together. Not that the kids are necessarily reading their menu as they go to lunch, but if we're all doing it right, we have a big, huge sign, a board easel that they write on the daily special. And a lot of our food service managers will draw a picture of it and, put dumping all the little cups of things into it. So that marketing is just really huge and fun to see people take advantage of that and use it to their best ability. So how did we start creating ethnic cultural meals? As we started to gain more and more schools, we started to really work with our schools to get together parent and student focus groups. We have done many different ways of doing this. We've invited them to our commissary to have a night of event cooking. We set this up very, very well ahead of time. We let them send in recipes that they would love to see on their menus. And we actually have them send in their recipe. And then we have talked to them about, prior to them coming in, we sent out information on what USDA guidelines are and what we have to follow when we're creating a recipe to make sure that it meets nutritional regulations. Once they have that information, they come in prepared for us to take their recipe and remake it in a way that will fit into nutritional compliance. We've done a lot of practice before they come in to those meetings, and we try the foods until we know that we've got a nutritionally compliant meal that we think is going to taste really good and that'll be acceptable. Many of the chefs that our larger schools hired, they have come during the summer when it's quiet and worked with us and shown us unbelievable ways to make bases. The Asian foods, you can make 2 or 3 bases and make multiple meals once you have a base that are all different and truly taste different. By adding a variety of vegetables and different things to it, it just amps up the quality of the food and really turns it into almost that restaurant type food. We have a big challenge as a catering company and food management company, and that's delivery of meals. So we create all of these great recipes. And then of course, we always keep student favorite meals, probably about 6 a year. And, but it's how do you transport those and still have the integrity of the food? You go out to your favorite restaurant and one night you can't go out, but you've got company and you're going to get that food. It just does not taste the same as oven to table. And that's of course the same in our business. So we have tested thousands of recipes, held them in our transport containers for 4 hours, and then taken them out and all tasted them to decide what the winners are. That it's just a very important process, the testing and the creating of every recipe that you're going to use no matter what. And so having these different cultural food focus groups come in and work with us, we were able to, over the course of 3 to 4 years, create an unbelievable amount of ethnic foods. And how do we incorporate them is, I know many schools have the NutriKids program. It's the oldest, I believe, USDA nutritional software program. And, they've done a great job of marketing opportunities to have it be very easy. It's not an easy program. I've had to hire a handful of people in our company over the years that just did nothing but work in NutriKids for a year to even understand how to effectively use the program. But once we effectively use that program, you have to enter every single nutritional ingredient of every item that you are making into that nutritional program. You have to identify the name brand. It's a tremendous amount of work. Then you create your recipes. This is how we've done it. And we create the recipes based upon our testing. And once we enter all of that data in to NutriKids, now we've got, I think we have probably um, purchased around 16 different spaces because we have so many recipes. And I don't know how many hundreds one chunk has, but I know that we have thousands of recipes. Once they're in that database, then we can pull. And when we're creating a menu, we want to make sure that we are not putting chicken back to back and beef back to back. We want to really try and get those menus created to where we're looking effectively at getting foods in there that kids are going to like and they're not going to be similar. We start a year ahead. Regardless of what's happened through COVID and everything, we still start a year ahead. And we've got backup meals just in case something has to be pulled out in all categories, whether it's meatless or whether it's chicken, turkey, or beef. So we always have a backup that we can insert when something's been pulled out. I think that having that plan in place is so important to keep the frustration at bay. We try and make sure that our backup meals are around the same calories and sodium as our regularly planned meals. And then we also look at trends, because compared to 20 years ago versus now, kids have been exposed to an unbelievable variety of foods. It's so awesome. I can't believe how many kids tell me sushi is their favorite food. How many kids say, oh, did you get down to the Ethiopian corner in, off of Cedar Avenue? Every restaurant there is fantastic. And it's just so much fun to know their exposure. They're so far past us. It's incredible. I know that I started eating pho, which is the Vietnamese soup. I want to say the first time I had it was maybe in 1991, 92 off of University Avenue. And everybody was saying, where do you eat? And I was telling them, there's this whole strand of restaurants. You need to get down there. And sriracha, just you could tell the people that the locals that were eating there, the whole container was just, I remember thinking, this is so dirty, but it's just delicious. And so we put pho on the recipe years ago in some of our Hmong schools. And today it's still their absolute favorite meal. How do we incorporate those traditional things, especially when it comes to noodles, things that are so important? We know the whole grain noodles don't stand up. We use the white rice noodles, and we make sure that since that recipe is high in salt, we are looking at all of our other meals and putting low salt meals that week. And then we incorporate a whole grain so that we meet the regulations and we still are within calories. So we are not eliminating these delicious ethnic foods by saying that we're not going to use traditional. What we're doing is making sure everything we plan around it in that week is lower in those items that are going to bump up calories and sodium. And that's how we create our ethnic weeks. It has been extremely successful. And it's been really, really fun to have schools get back to us year after year after year and say, oh my gosh, don't change the menu. And I'm like, your kids go there for 12 years. I have to change the menu. I want them to have new foods. Then we start working again. And sometimes it's only 2 or 3 changes. But I will tell you, our goal is I don't want to come to work or have my staff come to work every day. And we've got 19 to 21 days in a month that we feed our kids. We want to make sure that every day is highly participated in. If we start to see a trend or somebody remarks, didn't like that meal, I get 2 or 3 of those comments. I ask our field managers right away, find out about this meal. I want to get it off. Let's look at the numbers, and we'll look at the order numbers on those days. We immediately get rid of that. We're coming to work to feed kids, and there's food out there that the majority of them will be happy with. You have to split off in my business and create multiple menus because we have multiple schools. It's not just one school district, it's multiple schools. And that has been a huge challenge year after year. I don't know if I said earlier, but we work off of about 80 menus. Similarities, but there are 80 differences almost every single day out of the week, which means that we've got a prep line that's making a different food for a school. And I just was talking to another caterer that is similar to CKC. They've been around a lot longer. And he said, I don't understand how you can do it. And that's that back end, it's knowing how to work with NutriKids and really effectively that money that we pay for licensing for that. It was really important that we understood that. Charter schools are held to a different standard when it comes to auditing than public school district. And I don't think that it's intentional. It's just the way that they're being audited. They don't have the arena to offer multiple food options a day necessarily in the way that some of the public school districts, not all, but where you can go to stations if you decide that you want a sandwich that day, or you decide that you want pasta or pizza. Our charter schools, I'm always saying to myself, where's your kitchen? And they're like, you're standing in it. And it's like a closet. And we've created menus over the years to give those kids an advantage that hasn't been given to them because of space. So they can order every day, however many hot meals they want, however many vegetarian, however many cold meals, and however many deli salads. So a school has the option every single day with the CKC menu to be able to order multiple meals. And while they're not going to stations, they're getting their choices. And I got to tell you, it's all across the board. Hot food is by far number one. I think that it's tasty, and but we're seeing numbers in every category. Another thing that is really huge for I think every school is really effectively using spice bars. It's hard to add condiments because so many of them have high sodium, but doing spice bars, unbelievable spices now. And we add a lot of fresh herbs to salad bars. And I was gonna tell you today that one of the best ways to incorporate your own farm to school is to get those younger classrooms growing herbs, cilantro and parsley. They grow like crazy. They're cultivating and learning, and use those and make unbelievable salad dressings, or dry them out and chop those up and use those as spices that you can put on foods. Maybe it's going to be your pizza bar, and you're going to have your oregano and your parsley and your cilantro that you've dried out, and the kids have done that. And there are just so many fun opportunities to do easy things and actually do it at the school level, and get kids involved in learning simple ways to do these things. I know that we worked with the state health-wide improvement committee in Minneapolis several years ago, and 3 of our schools were awarded salad bars. And through that, and one of them was awarded a blender. The school that was awarded a blender did start growing their own herbs in a green room, and we gave them recipes that they could make salad dressings out of. And I'm telling you, we hardly ever served salad dressing to that school because they used all those recipes with their blender they had earned, and the herbs and things that they had grown. So, testing recipes, focus food groups, I highly recommend it. Looking at the trends of what's going on in the world as far as food. I know it sounds crazy, but I would imagine you've all done it. You look at all of those commercials from Taco Bell to Wendy's to all of them, and you see what they're creating. And that's when I'm saying, oh, kids are really attracted to that. How can we make a really great fun burger? How can we make a super cool nacho dish? How can we do something that's really simple and plump it up, but keep it? And I got to tell you, it's a winning strategy. Your favorite restaurants, when you're eating, think about the foods that you're trying, and how could that be incorporated into something really cool for your kitchen? Doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be, I think, creative and put into the program that's going to work well for you. The other thing that's so important for schools is making sure that you incorporate your commodities. And so I think that whenever we're planning our meals, we always plan ahead also to incorporate those commodities. We're looking for the cleanest meats that are not seasoned. We're looking at the texture of the diced versus the stripped chicken, and what meals are those going to be the best in. You know, we use a lot of diced for the younger kids, and we use a lot of strips for the older kids. And again, it's just getting cases of that food and experimenting ahead of time so that we know what we're going to be ordering because we planned our menu. So I think I've covered most of the things that you've asked me to, Brett, and wondering if anybody has questions at this point.
I do have a couple questions, and you did cover everything. It was one paragraph, by the way, everybody else. She covered one paragraph with that. I've got back to participation, because I think that's really important for a lot of school districts is, you know, some schools, and we had this conversation, I think, Sarah, last time, like, what is your favorite food, your favorite school food? And a lot of them came down to like 5 things. And those are probably our kids' favorite 5 things as well, but they weren't pho, right? They weren't that. Outside of the charter schools that are specifically around that kind of population, are other schools seeing participation rise with those new menu items?
So I'm going to say, I would imagine absolutely. So let's talk about, you know, of 5 favorite things. So if we're looking at a breaded chicken sandwich, and you're looking at a hamburger, and you're looking at pizza, and, you know, a couple, we would then say, when a school says, we want to take it easy, not so many crazy things right off the bat, then we would say, what's the standard for chicken sandwiches at this point? Well, it's Louisiana hot chicken. You know, there's a crispy chicken with, you know, kind of California style. It's starting to list down all the things that we can think of in that chicken sandwich area, or a chicken tender, and then creating a really great sauce around it. If it's a hamburger, there are so many ways to make a great hamburger, and it's not tremendously difficult. Pizza, it's about adding those toppings, those spices and things like that. I think that it's really important maybe then to have a focus about how you're going to introduce things. Communication to family and kids is so important.
Yep.
I'm not a big person about surveys. I have to be very transparent. I just, in 31 years, have never found that a survey has helped me make a great menu or change my business. But I am all about communication to the families to say, we have the greatest opportunity with free lunches, especially, can you imagine, across the nation, to really serve great food. Everybody should be on board with getting that participation as high as they can. And you will, if the food is appealing. There's never been a time like now. We're serving a total of about 35,000 meals a day. And prior to COVID, we were serving approximately 24,000. So in 2.5 years, with the opportunity to feed all, this is how massive our business has grown. And it's not because we're soliciting business, it's because the kids are liking the food. And I have said, the most important thing that we can do is make sure that we are making great meals every single day. I know how hard it is to purchase food. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I've got questions about purchasing as well, but I want to open this up for other questions to Annette, Megan, Carly, even, you know, Melvin. Do you guys have any questions for Nancy? I mean, that was a huge brain drop, right? Can we agree? That was huge.
And I think that, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's fascinating what you're doing, and it's exciting, and it makes me think of how what you're doing can impact other food service directors, or how can other schools start doing, well, okay, so when schools work with you, do they order from CKC Foods for their entire meals for the whole week? Do
Yes.
they order, is it nonstop, or could they do like one day and sample that at their school to see how that works, you know?
Really tough.
That would be so wonderful, but under USDA regulations, their reimbursable meals are by the week. And so they
Okay.
can't order one day and then, unless they're gonna do private, the other 4 days. So no, they always order their food by the week. And they're able to change those orders, 2 days prior, because by then we have to pull the food and slack it out to cook. So it's, no, they're all ordering ahead of time. And I think that with trying to introduce new items, it's to, again, look at what the current climate is in food. This year we introduced a lot of Indian food again. We're always been ahead of our time, but I introduced biryani this year, which is a rice and meat dish, and it comes with a yogurt sauce. Every taste test that we went to at a school last year, when they started letting kids back in towards the end of the year, once they put that yogurt on it, kids were like, I don't know what this is, but it's delicious. I just got so excited. I thought, oh my gosh, they're actually ready for this. And it's probably one of the favorite dishes. But marketing to families and parents and saying, this is what the trend is for 21, 22, 22, 23. And we are going to be introducing, 7 new school foods this year. Look for them, look on your menu. We're going to have small steps to introduction, but those focus groups are going to help when you have a winner, because every kid that tries it is going to say this was delicious. And then it's executing it that way, making sure you don't change it.
So I want to draw this back to local foods. And you talked a little bit about pricing. And earlier, Sarah and I had been talking about that a school district had ordered a Hubbard squash, which was 30 pounds and $10 or less. And all of a sudden that squash, that price per unit was nothing, but the value on the USDA side, where they give you the reimbursement, is huge. How you integrate that into the menu that's up to you. But I just want to talk about that as far as buying local. Number one, how to do that efficiently from an economic standpoint. And second, like, if you called up Bix, could you get like bitter squash? Could you get winter, what is it called? The Somali something. Can you get those, or are those things that you really have to get from local farmers?
No, so DOD obviously plays a huge part in many of the schools planning for fresh fruits and vegetables. We have for years gotten our list of farmers from all of the produce vendors that we use, because we use 3 or 4 of them. DOD this year, of course, they're having tremendous struggles. So they're working with third-party vendors. Bix is one of them. So no, we ask them ahead of time, and almost weekly our procurement is, what do you have that's available? What's a great buy? What is it that you're trying to? Because we can all change fruits and vegetables around.
Yeah.
It's a part of the nutritional meal pattern, but not actually a part of the calories or the sodium that we have to worry about. So we've had an unbelievable opportunity to really grow very closely with our produce partners and utilize that in that way. And there are schools that we know are offsite cooking schools, which would be more like the public school districts. They're the ones that take advantage of that more. They're cooking for their own school, following our menus that we've created for them. And they have that flexibility, and they're doing a wonderful job of introducing their kids to all kinds of things.
All right, that was I've got a list of questions. There's 20 more, but I want to know if anybody else has any other questions. No? Well, then I'll start with my questions. So when you're talking about, and we've only really got about 10 more minutes anyway, but so you're talking about the charter school system, and do you feel like that was, I mean, that had to have really pushed you right into this culturally diverse menu thing, right? And so through that charter school or magnets or maybe even the language schools, like my kids went to L'Etoile d'Honneur, did some of those things that you developed end up moving into your other menus and exposing kids that maybe at the Somali school didn't know about this Latino dish? Are we able to do that? Can we do that?
That's such a great question, Brett. And I'll tell you, remember when I said I started off at the childcare and they were like, "Ooh, that's really spicy. That's really," I mean, I was sending curry, literally curry to the kids, chicken curry with apricot sauce.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, it's super sweet. It's apricot. They're little kids. And so right off the bat, I was just doing what I knew as a restaurant operator, not what I knew about kids. But interesting enough about the two cultures, we have had quite a few schools in Minneapolis that literally have the Latino and the Somali culture.
Oh,
Hardest schools of all for us to feed. In the beginning, they like different hot sauce flavors, everything that they like is different. And that is where working very closely with those food focus groups really changed the way that we did things. First of all, it's that communication and the respect to the kids to say, look, I don't have a way of making a hot sauce that you're going to love when you love this. And I had all of them write down their 3 favorite meals and their 3 worst meals. Some of the kids, their worst meals was somebody else's favorite. It was really fun for them to realize, holy moly. I'm like, we could go out to dinner tonight and all of us read the menu and pay $10 for our dinner. And there is a chance that out of 20 of us, 10 of us are not going to like our meal that much. This is what it's like in school food service. And we have taken the time to educate our partners. We've taken the time to write little messages and do blogs that are directly to parents that are interested. We've taken time to educate teachers. They're the first line of defense and definitely the most vocal. They notice everything, but if they don't understand it, how can you be successful in telling them, how can we overcome this? I can't tell you, the number one complaint is how sugary breakfast is. We're doing a big class next week with probably about 30 teachers and some parents. And what we did was we took snapshots of breakfast in the grocery store and then labels that we're feeding. Manufacturers have done an incredible job of packaging and marketing these whole grain healthier items. The amount of sugar you can't even begin.
lying. I think the word is lying. I think you're looking for the word is lying.
It's going to be a real eye opener for the teachers and the parents that feel that their kids are just getting tons of the highest milk, the sugar content is in the milk. And it's by, 12 to 13 extra grams than anything on their breakfast. And they're eating, a great blueberry donut. They're delicious. We're going to have the parents all try them while they're reading the nutritionals. So I've gotten, I answered a little bit more than what you wanted.
No, that's perfect. Sarah, you have a question, and then I
I
think
totally do. Nancy, I'm just curious. So how do you select the student groups? Is it something that the school selects? Is it something that you select? Do you lead those groups?
Yes, we've got
tell us about those.
we asked the school to select them, and we really want them to select. We asked them, please have parent or teacher and some of the kids that are really just so unhappy with the food service program. We really need to start with those people first, and also understand where it's coming from, so that we can really have a very honest conversation. Sometimes we won't be able to fix it, but it starts with true awareness and understanding that we really care. We really want to get this right. And then we also ask them for kids that have that leadership, where other kids are going to listen to them, that kids that do want to make a difference. And so they put together that group based upon that. And I can't tell you, I don't know that we've ever had a bad meeting. And we continue with those meetings until they say, you know what, everything is going fantastic. We've had principals, directors of schools that have gone down and served lunch for 3 days, not just for 1 day. And we've asked them to pick days that are unusual food days. So let's say that it was a biryani or an apricot curry chicken day. And they keep saying, oh, they just say that the food is so bad. The director goes down and all the kids eat. They can't wait to get up there and see the director serve them their food. And then he goes around and says, how is everything? Or she goes around and the kids say it was fantastic. The director is then eating the food and saying, I can't believe how good this food is. It's insane. And pretty soon we have things turning around. It's just paying attention to them sometimes in the smallest way. We've had them write on big, huge sheets of paper tacked on the wall when there's new meals that are introduced, like or dislike, and they ask them respectfully to only put a negative or a positive comment. That's going to really help everybody know. So that's our surveys, is a thumbs up. We've had schools that have had representatives stand in line while kids are waiting to get meals and given them little samples of what that special, that new meal is for the day. Everybody in line, they'll generally try it if they see other people trying it. By the time they get up there, they're starving. They can't wait to get that plate of food. It's really fun when schools get involved and they take those little tiny steps. And I think that food is education. We all know that, but it's taken a much bigger role in the last several years than it ever has. And it's up to us to keep that going.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's perfect. And I think also, while the majority of your schools and daycares and other catering services are in the cities, I don't think that that's that different in rural settings. I mean, we have very large populations of Latinos and Southeast Asians, and maybe closer to the cities for East Africans or Pan-Africans. But I think that those good food is good food, right, Nancy? And I think that kids recognize it. Yeah, if it's too spicy, I get it. And my kids won't eat beans. I don't know why, but they just won't. They just won't. What? They just won't eat it. But they will eat squash and they will eat other things. So, it's a bit of a balance along those lines. I think your approach, coming from your background and moving that into a food service and into school foods, is really a gem. And I don't know that I'm sure it happens other places. I'm sure there's somebody in Detroit that's way better than you, Nancy. I don't know.
I'm sure.
No, I'm just teasing. But the point is, I think that this is, and for people watching this video, Nancy told me earlier before the video started that they're going to share sort of a week's menu, maybe a couple of recipes, but just to kind of say, look, even in a rural setting where you feel like you have sort of a monolithic eater, you don't. that there's a reason why there are now 3,000 pho restaurants in Minnesota. Is it's good.
Yeah.
Everybody likes it. My children who won't eat beans will eat pho.
Yeah. Well, and a couple other little quick tips too that I had wanted to remember to tell you. A vehicle of serving a new food in is so important. So when we want to introduce something that, well, in the past that was so off the wall, but I'm like, we have to introduce this. It's so delicious. We would get like a little paper boat or some type of a different cup to put that in. So when bowls became very important, we thought it was really important that even though schools have trays, we want to spend that 1 to 2 cents to get that hot dog boat, whether it's the 1 pound boat, or we want to get a bowl, a paper bowl that they can serve it in so that it really looks like that bowl, that chicken pot pie bowl and that Mongolian meatball bowl. And I'm telling you, you put a different vehicle on that tray to feature your special meal, kids are going to go for it because it looks so cool. It's just such a beautiful way. And then eventually, if that cost ends up being exorbitant, you take it away. They know what the meal is by then, but they're always going to love that. Introducing herbs, I think rice is just such a fantastic vehicle for building ethnic meals and also for filling up kids. And Chipotle has made the cilantro rice the rage. And so when we started serving cilantro years ago in our recipe and garlic, we would do half the pan with the cilantro. We tell them garnish half the pan with the cilantro and garlic and leave the other half plain. That way, when kids come up, they can choose the cilantro or the plain, and you're not having to go between 2 containers. And it's just shortcuts and ways that you can keep introducing. Now, I don't think anybody wants, plain rice anymore. They all want the parsley or cilantro or whatever rice you're using. And again, using those fresh herbs, fresh limes. We use so much lime juice and lemon juice in our meals. Great way to marinate your meats before you're going to add them to a recipe. And it doesn't cost a lot. The flavor goes so far. It's just unbelievable. You won't believe it, but I look at food costs differently. We have meals that we don't even break even on, very few. And then we've got our meals where they're just huge profit makers. And we have to have that balance of both. I'm looking at numbers of participating students. If I meet the mark and I have those numbers coming in, it's pennies that we've been making it on for years and years. Pre-buying food, working with the distributors to find out what's a great buy. Please send me those lists every single week. Making the substitutions based upon that. It has allowed us the opportunity to really not have to cut back on the quality of the food and still be able to move forward. And we just find ways. I know there was a couple of years where I hardly even looked at our profit and loss because I just felt like we're in a growing spurt. We're going to lose money at this point, but it's about how we move forward and how many kids we feed. And that's where we keep it.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, we've kind of run up against our hour here, and I'm wondering if any of our guests have any questions. And thank you from Megan, of course.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah.
And we will make this available. We did just Sarah, I think, sent out 3 of the previous
Yes,
conversations.
Recording. Yep. Really excited about that. Nancy, this was just fantastic. Now, before we close, I just want to say, if anybody's interested in reaching out to you directly, do you have, can you give us your contact, or at least your website, if you want to promote that so that people can reach out, check out the website, at least to be where to find you. And then are you okay with us sharing your email with the crew?
Yes, absolutely. I can send that to you, but ckcgoodfood.com is our website, and Nancy@ckcgoodfood.com. And my number, if you ever want to call and just ask questions, is 651-338-7786. And I do look forward to sending you that week of menu and recipes, and just maybe even a couple of other really fun recipes that are so easy to make and would just really be a great addition to any school if you're not already doing something like it.
Yeah, I think the most relevant one up down here would be the Latino one.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most, I'm constantly surprised at the number of Latino kids at Lake City, where my kids go to school, and how the food, they've got a Taco Tuesday, but the tacos are, they're not real tacos. Even my son knows that these are not real tacos.
Yeah. We have just hundreds of Latino dishes that are just, I was looking at the picture that you uploaded, sir, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that was a chicken enchilada nacho that we made. And I was like, I kind of want to go eat Mexican tonight now that I see the picture.
It was such a cool picture from your website. I'm like, hope you don't mind I swiped that one, because that
No,
was a
they're
nice
all, every
photo.
picture that we have is our meals that we've made. We've never used stock photos for our website, so it's fun. Yeah.
Great.
All right.
I appreciate
Well, I'm gonna
that.
go home
Thank
and make nachos or.
I'm gonna go have fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
Never had
pointing
one,
out that
guys.
I live in the middle of nowhere and can't go have fun. That was great. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you
But-
so much. I really had
by
a
the
great
way,
time.
This was this year's T-shirt that you didn't get because you didn't volunteer at the state
I
fair.
know. I was just telling somebody
I
I've got to set up my volunteer schedule for this coming year. It's been a long time. I think it's been difficult.
We did really appreciate your support. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to make this connection. Otherwise, I'm not sure that I would have known who you were and the hard work you've done. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You
Okay.
take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
That's a good work, Nancy.
Thank you.